everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mrs. Z and this is Whole Latte Learning because this school year I'm going to be doing a whole latte learning. I am jumping into my first year as a librarian, and as much as I am excited, I am just as nervous. So as we go throughout this journey, my plan is to share everything that I'm learning and experiencing, and I'm already learning so much that I just want to share and put out there for maybe other people who are looking into jumping into a school librarian role. Whatever the case may be, here I am. Today, I wanted to talk about talking points, questions that I was asked during the interview process. I was interviewed twice for 2 different librarian positions, and these are just some of the questions that I really remember being asked across both interviews. So I wanted to share that today in hopes that it will help somebody else who plans to be interviewed or follow through with getting a librarian position. Both of these positions, like I said, that I was interviewed for are elementary school librarian positions. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're interviewing for a school librarian versus a public library position, it might be a bit different, I imagine. But this was strictly for the school setting. Let's get started. One of the questions that I was asked right off the bat was, how will you ensure that the library is a space for all learners to use? You want to make sure that you are emphasizing in your answer accessibility and belonging. You want to make sure that every student feels seen and that the library and its materials and everything that comes with it, services, are available to all, regardless of their background, of their abilities. It has to be inclusive for all learners. It's also really important that students have a voice in the library and that they have some ownership over their space. Student surveys, you can show off their work, get student input as to what they want to see in their library space as far as books or opportunities. Another question I was asked is, how do you plan to integrate technology into the library space? You want to make sure that you talk about how technology is going to be used as a tool and it's never going to replace you as the librarian or books. You need to think of how you're going to integrate technology into your space, but not let it replace anything that's essential to student learning. You might also mention digital literacy lessons, how to research, how to safely browse the internet and look for what you're looking for, how to use keywords in your searches, how to have a good online presence, how to stay safe online. Another thing I was asked was, how do you feel about hosting book fairs? And for this, this comes with the job as a school librarian, right? But it's so much fun. And in my school, I'm going to be doing it twice a year, so once in the fall and once in the spring. And how I answered it was, I am so excited. Like, during my practicum, I got to sit in and take orders and stuff. But I did make sure that I asked, will there be somebody who can help me in there, especially for the first book fair in the fall, because it's my first book fair. I've never done it before, and I want to make sure that it goes smooth as possible, that it's organized, and that I really understand what I'm supposed to be doing during this event. And that's something that I actually talked to my district librarian about. She ensured that she would be there to help me set up and help me with the cash flow of everything. I would also mention, getting PTO volunteers in. The parents love volunteering. They want to help. Making sure that you have parent involvement is also key with that as well. Another thing I was asked was, how will you make the library an interactive space? This is a lot of hands-on activities. It's not just sitting and it being quiet in there, as important as that can be, during silent reading days. But how can it be interactive? How can the kids interact with the things in the library? Maker spaces are huge for this, by the way, and I'm very lucky and grateful that there is part of my library that is dedicated to maker spaces, incorporating stations in the library space. Nothing wrong with that. You could do a maker table, a puzzle corner, a poetry wall, little STEM challenges as part of a station as well. Emphasizing student choice is also huge as well. We know that's huge in the classroom, but equally as important in their library space. Give them choices. This is another area that's, again, super important to mention: hands-on learning, but also student ownership. Let them choose what they do in the library. Give them options of things that they can do to interact with that space. I was also asked, how do you plan to stay organized in the library? And one of the things that I thought of was definitely, obviously, labeling different parts of the library, so different genres, making sure that everything is organized in my library specifically for the big population of ELLs that I have. So making sure things are labeled both in English and Spanish, providing as many visuals as possible. But as far as me as the librarian, how I plan to stay organized is tubs. For sure, tubs. You can't go wrong with tubs. Labeled bins, color-coded sections, consistent routines for me as a librarian will be key. And inventory checks, doing those frequently to make sure that you understand what's in your library space, maybe things that need to be weeded and taken out. But really, for any question that you're asked, you want to make sure that it's not just about you. You want to include students in your answers as well. That's what they want to hear, that you are going to support students, encourage student independence and ownership within the library. So as long as your answer involves students, making them priority, and that your organization ultimately affects their organization, you want to make sure that you mention that. Principals love hearing that. I was also asked what a typical day in the library would look like. As soon as they walk in, they need to know what's expected of them, right? Going over those routines and procedures right off the bat to ensure success for my students is so important. How do you walk into the library? What do you do when you walk into the library? Where do you go? What part of the library should you go to first, right? Voice levels. How are you walking in? You also want to make sure you are mentioning mini lessons. They're going to come in and have a little mini lesson. Maybe it's regarding research. Maybe it's about a certain genre or a topic of the week. Maybe it's about digital citizenship. After that, they get some station work. They might get some partner tasks. They get to create something. And of course, check out their books. It's important that my students know the flow of their time with me, as equally as it is important for me to make sure that I stick to that flow and organization of that hour that I have each group. One question that I was also asked is, you have a student who is reluctant to read. How can you help them? The first thing I mentioned was finding out what they are interested in, what they love outside of school. Maybe it's sports. Maybe they're involved in some kind of other extracurricular. Maybe they like fashion or cooking, something like that, right? As soon as I know my students and what they're interested in, I can guide them to certain books and topics that they would probably enjoy reading about. It's possible that they've had a bad understanding of reading up until this point, right? Maybe they saw it as more of like a chore or something that they do just in school, and they don't really have enjoyment of it because reading is never fun for them. They were forced to read things. I emphasize in my interview that I want to make sure I know what every single student is interested in so that I can help them find the right book. And maybe it's a graphic novel. That's fine. There is a book for everybody out there, and I told my principal this. I said, I truly believe that everybody can find a book that they enjoy. They just have to find the right book, right? If a student doesn't like reading, it may not be their favorite thing in the world, but they can find a book that would interest them. I believe that. That's my job, is to make sure I understand my students and find them what I think they would really enjoy. And if there's nothing in the library that they enjoy, I can get their feedback on what they would like to see as far as book selections in the library, and then I provide that for them. It's also important that you are celebrating their reading wins. Finishing a chapter, that's amazing. Finishing a whole book, that's awesome. Tell me all about it, right? Just really being involved in their reading journey. I think it's also important to note that there are multiple ways for students to read. It doesn't have to be right out of a chapter book. Like I said, it can be a graphic novel. Maybe it's an audiobook. Maybe it's a digital format. I just need to find out how my students prefer to get their information, how they prefer to receive stories, and that's what I need to provide for them, and making sure that they know they have options. One of the biggest things that I was asked, one of the most important questions, was how do you plan to handle behaviors in the library? My students have to know what's expected of them, first and foremost, and that's my job, right? So what is expected when you walk into the space? Number one. And we hold each other accountable to that. We hold the kids accountable to that. On the very first day of school, when they walk into the library for the first time, I want them to be able to express to me what they want this library space to look like and what they want the space to feel like. Because that gives them ownership, and then they can hold themselves accountable to what they tell me. So emphasizing those expectations first and foremost, so important. It's just like the classroom, right? You have to go over those expectations right off the bat, or else that's going to set you up for success and the students up for success. Another thing I would mention is expectations or norms within the flow of the library. How are kids checking out books? Where do they go for stations? Are they in groups for stations? Do they get to choose where they sit during the lesson? I also mentioned if there's a behavior in the library space, first just talking to them, asking them what they need in that moment, and trying to provide it for them as best as I can. I think a lot of times adults tend to react to student behaviors before they actually meet them on their level and have a conversation with them. So I want to be able to have a conversation with my students if they're struggling and ask them how I can help them and what they need in that moment. First and foremost, provide a quiet space for them, like a calm down corner or something of that matter. Fidgets, giving them things that they can touch with their hands and get their mind off of the big emotions and feelings that they're having in that moment. Key, important, helpful things, at least in the classroom, that I plan to transfer into the library space. Really, it just comes down to making sure that the students have what they need to succeed and keeping my students safe. So those were the key questions that I was asked during my 2 interviews. The biggest things that they want to hear is that you are all about your students. You're going to put your students' needs, first, no matter what, and that the library will be an accessible space for all learners, and that you put their interests first. Yes, you have a lot of students, but you want to make sure that every single kid in there feels like they are a part of their library space. You want to make sure that you are bringing technology into your library space, because a lot of us don't like technology, but it's part of the world that we are in, and it's so important that we are teaching our kids how to use technology safely, and in the library space, how to search for what they are looking for, and making sure that they understand what's available to them digitally. You also want to make sure that you are getting others involved in the library, so bringing in volunteers. You don't have to do this alone. You are going to be working with other teachers, going to be collaborating with admin, with parents, with the community. You want to make sure that you are creating a safe place for your students as well to get the most out of the library, because the library is a learning space for all. It's a fun space, and it shouldn't be seen as a place that you go when you're in trouble. That's what you need to bring into your interview. All of those key points. Just keep students first on your mind. Students, collaboration, how you can get others involved in the library, how you can include technology, and you're golden. If you are preparing for a librarian interview, good luck. I hope this was helpful. You're going to do amazing. I wish you the best of luck in your journey. If you'd like to see more tips about the librarian journey, or you just want to follow along on my first year as a librarian, be sure to hit subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, say hello. I would love to know that you're here. I thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!